Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the Demography Workshop. I'm Victor. I'm the Associate Director for Research here at the Center for Economics of Human Development. We're organizing the workshop this quarter. I want to give a thanks to Linda Wade and her team at NORC for inviting us to organize the workshop. This is the second to last one, as you can see, but we hope you still join us next week for Alexandra Bertani's talk. Today, we're very happy to have here Dr. Pamela Jervis Ortiz. She's Assistant Professor of Economics in the Department of Industrial Engineering at the University of Chile. And much of her work focuses on understanding and identifying the determinants of parental investments around the world, including work on evaluating parental stimulation and nutritional programs via randomized field experiments. And we're very happy to hear kind of present today on the home visiting program in India, among other work that she's doing here in the US. Pamela, thanks for joining, and the floor is yours.
No, many thanks for the invitation, and I'm quite happy to be here and present my work, because that is the idea, that we try to share our knowledge so then we can implement this in other places and improve like childhood lives and reduce poverty. I'd like to use my introduction to explain why an economist is working on this, because the final aim is to try to reduce like poverty and reduce inequalities. So I will share my screen, if that sounds okay. And let me. Okay.
Perfect.
Maybe I will just eliminate this from here. Let me put this here, and I will the chat. Yeah. So if I am moving my head here, is because I will see the chat in another screen. Okay. Today I will present some work that I have done on early childhood development interventions. And I would like to focus mostly on the case of psychosocial stimulation. I know that we could do like several types of intervention to try to address the issues that we face in child development. But the aim of this talk in particularly is psychosocial, though I would like to mention that most of the work that I do, it takes like a holistic approach, okay? Yeah. So first, some of knowledge, because when we do these interventions, we work with quite a big team. So we have people from Yale, from the Institute for Fiscal Study, where I was based before, and Penn. We also have like some in Europe, in the Stockholm University and Norwegian School of Economics. I also here like at the University of Chile. And I also wanted to tell you a bit about how we start this. The first steps were around like 2010 or so, 2011, when I started my PhD, in fact. So at that moment, I wasn't involved in this project. It was a Colombian project that Horacio Tanasio and Costas Meguiar, together with professors from Yale, together with Sally McGregor, Graham McGregor, who is the one that designed the Jamaica project that maybe you heard some workshop ago, start working on Colombia and adapting the curriculum and trying to see how having like some parental stimulation in terms of like home visiting could improve child development in the short, medium, and long term. I joined at the last of that, mostly with an agenda that I have in terms of social norms, parental beliefs, in the way that not just to get an idea how good are the impacts, but also to try to understand the mechanism behind, and mostly like try to see how we can adjust behavior through social norms, beliefs, attitudes, preference, and so on. And then we started the project together with the same more or less team in India. That is the one that I will talk mostly today, together also with Professor Jerry Berman from Penn and others from the IFS. Currently now, we also got some funding to do a Tanzania adaptation as well of the ReShape, together with this more holistic approach. and including as well some new technologies in the implementation of it. And here, like, we are some of the same that before, a few of them, but we also incorporate Inbel Almas from Stockholm University that joined to work with us, and Mark Bernstein from UNICEF, and before other places, like to actually like provide like more input in terms of the child development work. And finally, as Victor was mentioning, like I would also like to, if I have some time, to tell you a bit more about another project that we have with Professor Atanasio and Costas Megir, as well as Professor Smith, Megan Smith from Yale, also in psychiatry, for an intervention that we are planning in New Haven. Normally, we also work with several child development specialists, with project implementers, with survey companies, and we have a lot of funding that you can see here for each of these projects, but it's just a knowledge, so then nobody feel bad about it. So let me start with some background. Poverty, as you may know, like poverty, malnutrition, and poor stimulation, of course, are preventing millions of young children in low and middle income countries for reaching their development potential. And in fact, like the Lancet series in the last 3 years, 2007, 2011, and 2017, have estimated that there are almost over 200 million of children. In fact, the last Lancet was around 250 under the age of 5 that cannot reach their development potential. Of course, that have like big consequences, as I mentioned in my introduction, in terms of like the intergenerational cycle of poverty, that will imply to get like some deficits in human capital at its heart. And in fact, we know that early investment can yield higher returns. So in some way, we can link the information that we know, the fact that there are children that cannot reach the development. We can also use like economic theory to see like how actually human capital can reduce the cycle of poverty and inequalities. And we also have like some fact in terms of the evidence that we have in the literature that early investment can yield higher returns. So in that sense, that provides you the input to try to use interventions in early life that can have impacts not only in the short term, but also in the long term.
Professor, excuse me,
yeah?
sorry to stop you. Regarding the three factors that hampers the development of children, do you have a sense of like how much does each factor like contribute to the lack of development? Like, for example, how much does malnutrition contribute to the lack of development of children?
Thank you, William. And I didn't mention it at the beginning, but please like ask me meanwhile I'm presenting. I have a presentation that lasts around like 50 minutes, and I think that we have like 1 hour and 20 minutes. So I'm happy to have as many discussions as you wish. And also like if I am not able to finalize, I can always share my slides. Yeah, well, that is exactly this slide. Like I wanted to actually separate it, and not only in terms of how much is the weight that they have, because to answer that question, William, is a bit difficult. It depends on the context, the place that you are working with. It also, you can see that some papers actually like have like a huge impact, and that huge impact sometimes is because they are choosing like a sample that is already like with low level of nutrition, with low level of physical capacity. So in some way, of course, if you are like doing an intervention in the ones that have like less input or they are less prepared, the impact of your intervention will be higher. And what I wanted to put here actually, because it's quite difficult to mention which are like the weights, as I said, because it's different for each context in Africa and Asia and in like Western countries. But here we can see like how actually like is related in terms of like the developmental state of children and young adolescent, if you want. So you can see how at the beginning, like poor maternal nutrition and health is quite relevant. So that means that before even the child is born in preconception and prenatal, it's quite important to actually address that. And that is what we are trying to do in New Haven and actually now in Tanzania. That once that they are born, actually what is important is like exclusive breastfeeding and responsive caregiving, that I also have like some projects that we are working with that with mothers. In fact, like it's what we are doing now in New Haven as well. And in Tanzania, And there is also like research in other places from Gary Berman and others that shows that it's quite important to address that. There is also like other type of illness that depend also in the context. There are in some places that you have malaria, in others that you have, but there are issues there that don't allow children to actually develop their brain at the level that you need. And in that sense, even though that you do an intervention later, starting like at month 6, month 5, maybe there is already a gap at that point because you didn't address like the normal development of the brain. So even if you try to stimulate these children, they don't have the capacity to absorb everything that you are teaching them or you are trying to stimulate them, and therefore they cannot reach their potential. Not because the program is not working well, it's because you didn't address what was relevant before that, okay? So in that sense, I think that it's relevant to know which are the main concern in each stage of the child life, and then to try to have like interventions that could address those one. And in that sense, each of them are valuable, and the important is to try to understand a bit more, I guess, which is what we are trying to do, the complementarities between these interventions. So then we can actually calculate what you are saying. What is the relevance of each of these ones? So we can have like some added value on the impact. And in some cases, it could be that the extra is nothing, but actually if you don't do it, the effects of the previous intervention fade out. So there is also like quite important to notice that sometimes it's not that we want to get like more like an impact, it's also like to try to maintain even the impacts that we gain from previous interventions, okay?
Quick question. So the interventions we're talking about, it's mostly for the disadvantage in some way, right? In both.
Well, that is what it's like. Yeah, normally, like when like researchers, I will say we try to maximize our return. No, so if you ask me where I will spend $1, and this is what, like we know that the dollar that you spend is higher in early years. No, like that is the Heckman paper a while ago. But then like within like that age range where you will get like even more return is that you try the disadvantage and like stunted children, for example. Now we have like last year there was or maybe even this year, I don't remember, in the Lancet from Sally McGregor and others in Bangladesh that they get like a 1.5 or something like that, standard deviation in the same intervention that we have done in other places, and we just get like, well, it's not just like 0.3 and 0.4, that is quite good, but theirs is amazingly good. And that is because like the level like that you started with them at baseline was much, much worse than the ones that you have in other populations. And that is something that you need to take in consideration in terms of policy design.
And how long does that 1.5 standard deviation last?
Well, that we don't know yet. Like they just
how long?
started
One thing would be very helpful would be to find out the length of follow-up in any of these interventions.
Well,
so
that paper,
maybe,
sorry.
No, I'm just curious. And you're going to go through a list of interventions. The real question is, how long do you follow these people? And what are the effects when you follow them over, say, 10 years, 20 years, and so forth? Yeah,
exactly. So let me go. I think that I can answer that with this.
Well, whatever, as you go forward, and not this second, whatever.
Yeah, thank you.
Whatever.
It's just that so some of the background is, given that we have that as a fact, because before I start just with evidence, scientific evidence, well, we know that there are like some small scale efficacy trials that actually like that were like super like highly supervised, that maybe is quite difficult to do with that scale, which is another thing that we are trying to do with the projects that I will present to you now, which is an innovation from this project. In a way, we try to do it scalable. And then we start working with the governments immediately. So in some way, we take into consideration the restrictions in terms of human resources, also like in terms of monetary restrictions. So then in a way, we can implement a program that it will be feasible and it will be start working or start being implemented in the field at state level or even national level in the same way that we tested in our intervention, like in the evaluation. But here you can see that there are some of these projects, and in fact, one of them, the Jamaica Home Visiting Program that you know quite a lot, Professor Heckman, actually like is following these kids up to 30 years, no? Like that is the last paper that is out now. And that is what we are trying to also get funding for all the projects that we have. In the one in Colombia, actually, we already did like a second follow-up. We didn't find like that the effects actually fade out, but that is also expected and in line with what you find in Jamaica. In Jamaica, you get impacts in the short term, like as soon as you finish, maybe 2 years after, but then like 6 or 7 years throughout adolescent, and maybe even before adolescent, like late adolescent, let's say early adolescent, everything disappear, fade out. But then when you start measuring like other type of outcomes, crime, violence, even like in terms of labor markets, those things start to appear again. So,
but if you look at the cognitive test, I think they got significant impact for cognitive skills through the whole life cycle. Like
in which
right,
one?
things like executive functioning and other dimensions.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean,
So I think that's a mischaracterization.
Yeah. So the thing you mentioned maybe about the verbal test, like for some medium age teenage, maybe like they're quite similar, but in terms of the really like the cognitive skill test for Jamaican program, like they do have significant impact through the whole like 30 years. Yeah.
Well, in particular, when they tested at 5-7 years old, they don't find impacts when they use the WIPSI.
I mean, if you look at like the papers, like if by subcategorize and within like, you know, the cognitive skills, actually they do have impact. But for some the subcategories in terms of like the language part, like, they do not have many, you know, things. Yeah.
Well, I could send you well, we have the paper, but I think that I'm not wrong, but maybe I am, that actually like there is like a period of time that they don't find impacts for the Jamaica intervention. And that is mostly between 5 and 7-9 years. The question is like, was it the test? Was it like, what was the thing that, because maybe you were not measuring like executive functioning, they start to measuring executive function later. Now we know much more about executive functioning. At that point, executive functioning wasn't something that it was so easy to measure. And now we have like more tests and more development to actually measure this in the field. But yeah, and I don't want to also to take the point that I just put it as an example, the Jamaica, that doesn't happen in all the studies. In all the studies, that doesn't mean that they fade out. In some of them happen, like for example, in our case in Colombia, is also in the second follow-up, the impacts that we found, they fade out. And we hope that when we go back.
What age was that?
That was when they were around 7 to 9.
Okay, thanks.
So which is more or less similar and consistent with the Jamaica study. But we are getting like funding for continue like following up these children. The problem is that you cannot apply to that funding at the beginning and you never get it. So that is the issue, like to try to convince like people to get so then we can get funded and we can continue these children's. For the one in India now, we are having like we follow these children up to age 6. I will explain you what we do, and then we will continue following later. For the Tanzania, we are actually having like the interventions within a longitudinal study. So in some way, we are assuring that we will follow these children regardless of the intervention, and the intervention are a subsample of the longitudinal study. And the same we plan to do in New Haven. So in that sense, we are taking into consideration what you mentioned in terms of it's not only important the impact that you get at that point when you finish the intervention or even like 2 years after. The idea is to try to follow these studies like for 40, 50 and as much as you can. And we are trying now, in fact, in the Tanzania project to get funding from the start. So then we can have a longitudinal study. We apply for a longitudinal study and then we get extra funding for interventions that we do within this for different, in fact, like, and then we can do interventions in different stages as well. So that is the way that how we are addressing this problem and trying to get also the funding in an optimal way. Well, this is what I talk about, like the need now is also like to take the science to scale, as there are still like some key research questions that we need to address, how we can actually design scalable interventions that are both cost effective, There are few directions that actually calculate the cost effectiveness of the results that they get. We didn't do it, for example, for several studies, and we started in Colombia, and we also did it in India. Of course, we will do now in the new projects in New Haven and Tanzania. Also, like the question that we just discussed before, are these effects or impacts sustainable in the long run? And if they are not, how you can try to maintain them. And for that reason, what we are trying now in our projects is to have these interventions throughout, and then you continue re-randomizing. So for that reason, like the first intervention, we try to have like high levels of sample size, so then we can split those with re-randomization and different interventions throughout the life cycle. And then, as I mentioned before, when I talk a bit about beliefs, social norms, and others, how or can these interventions affect household behavior, which are driving the impacts, which is crucial in some way, because if you try to change like household behavior using like this holistic approach and the bioecological framework that is not only the child, but all the environment, even the community, thinking of the norms that they have, we should also try to aim not only to affect child directly, but actually also their environment and the behavior that they have. And this is related exactly with the previous one. If we could get like some externalities in knowledge transmission, which we are trying actually now to do with some of the programs that we are doing more and more, instead of using home visit, to have like group sessions. So then we can generate as well, and we have a paper for India in terms of the impacts of the groups in the social network, as well as maternal empowerment or women empowerment, reducing violence, and other like spillovers effect that you get from these interventions.
So just to clarify, this is interesting. So one of the mothers receives an intervention, and then they have group sessions, and then maybe the benefits extend to the other mothers that were not part of the intervention, but that were the same group as the original mother. Is that right? Or? Well,
I will explain it now, like how we did it in India. So okay. If you give me some time, then I can explain it much better. So we designed, what I will show you today is like the design, and we design and we test alternative approaches to delivering scalable early childhood development interventions. And they aim to improve parental practices, parental-child interactions, and with emphasis on psychosocial stimulation. So today I will talk to you about 3 projects: the ECD interventions in Odisha, in Tanzania, and in New Haven. The basic structure of this project is that they were guided mostly by the Jamaica experiment that we were discussing. The key presumption of some interventions is that directly targeting families with parental interventions is more effective than actually provide like cash transfer, conditional or unconditional. So that is like the pre-assumption of this. And in fact, now in Tanzania, we will also test this, because we will do like one arm with cash transfer and another arm with parental stimulation. So we will be able to see like what is more important. Unfortunately, we don't have the funding for both, but it will be great to actually test how they complement.
But is there, you think there's some independent effect of cash at any level? Or,
yeah,
I mean, are you going to be able to vary, just vary what the level is? I think the statement you're making seems pretty broad, and it looks like it might make a lot of difference if you triple the amount of money in one versus the other. So how do you get at that kind of question?
Well,
making that comparison and designing the experiment.
Yeah, so what we are planning now is actually we will give exactly the same money that the government will spend if they do the parental stimulation, because we are also thinking in terms of a scalable and like taking this to a scale. So if we want to compare a program that the government is already spending some money, then we are thinking, okay, what if the government, instead of spending that money in a parenting program for each family, we give that money to the family directly. So that is the way that we are trying to address. But you are right. Like we could also like actually like, and that is for any cash transfer intervention in some way. Like what is the correct level? And for that, we are designing this intervention. So we are planning to have like several focus group discussion and also like piloting and technology studies, so we can actually follow this family and know how they're spending their money. We are actually doing a piloting also to get like their consumption, like a diary. So it's quite crucial actually to get a diagnostic, a good diagnostic, before even designing the amount that we will use. But we are aware of the concerns that you are mentioning, and it's something that we are thinking quite a lot. We're also thinking like what is best, like conditional or unconditional. Some of us, of the PIs, like think that unconditional is much better. Other ones think that actually like we should put like some condition on it. So it's something that we are still like trying to define in some way.
What would the condition be? I don't want to get you off your talk, but it seems like there are a lot of possible conditions, and you could target it with the size of the gain that you measure in the course of a program. I mean, you could have a piece rate almost, but I assume, anyway, that's going way far away. Go ahead, please, ignore the question.
Yeah. But yeah, like it's mostly related with child expenses, but we can talk once I present the Tanzania stuff.
Yeah, I know, I don't want to slow you down.
But just to fix ideas really quick, so how much money are we talking about? So you said giving cash transfers to some.
Yeah, so that is like we are also like designing it, and I would prefer like not to say like a number without like actually like we have like meetings with the government at the middle of December. We are actually going to Tanzania now at the end of November. So we are still like, it's something that is still like not easy to figure out yet with the government, but yeah, it doesn't, like that is the other thing. It can be like a low amount, and also can be like so high. For that reason, also in the diagnostic that we are doing, we are also implementing, which is something that I really like, and I advise you everyone to do a proper diagnostic and to get like more information from the families, but using like eliciting their behavior more than actually asking how much you spend. So we are designing several games for beliefs, for household allocation, for getting their social norms, for risky behaviors, with these typical beans or games that you can have. Even we are trying to do like some lab experiments. So there is a lot that we are doing properly before we actually start implementing the intervention, that we are thinking that will start like middle next year. So we still have some time. So
these elicitations
any
are
ideas
on
or
the parents?
feedback? Sorry, any feedback that you have or ideas, we are more than welcome to receive.
But the
Yes,
elicitations
Professor?
you're doing are for the parents or for the children?
The stimulation that we are doing is for children. Yeah,
No. You said you were going to get background variables on the family.
For the whole family.
Right.
And the household allocation is a game that we are doing to get information for expenses that they do within the family. So we can also even measure like in some way bargaining power. So what if he or she take the decision, but also in terms of their children. And actually, like we are testing it now also in Pakistan, like in a couple of weeks, just in data collection. So to get like an idea how different it is depending on the context. But you can invite me to present you like beliefs, social norms, and all our work on that. I think that is something I like it quite a lot in another session if you want, and I'm happy to.
No, we're familiar with Flavio's work, so that's fine.
Yeah, well, but this is a bit different. It's not, that one is just beliefs. I'm talking now about household allocation, bargaining power.
I see. No, that is different. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And for the transfer program, are you doing as a one-time transfer that is a kind of financial shock, or are you going to like partner with the government and say that like in the following years, everyone who gave birth to a child, you're going to receive some amount of money? What kind of implementation?
Yeah, we're thinking to transfer money to moms monthly, in a monthly base for 2 years. So
it's like families who don't have children already, they are going to know that if I like give birth to a children, they will receive money or not? Well,
that is something that, yeah, because actually like we are working like in a level at the village level. So the idea is that we don't have like any ethical problem at the village level, and that is something that we are trying to address not only for the money, like the transfer, also for the parenting intervention. It's unfair that some of them receive and another not. And also because we are working with community health workers, with facilities that are already there, health facilities are already there. So in a way, we want to test the whole thing in a scalable way. And we can like save some costing in terms of evaluation. We don't have to evaluate everyone, no? in the evaluation, like the whole sample. But yeah, it's something that we are also like defining and working on it. But the main idea is what I told you just now. Regardless of what have done in Jamaica, there are like several innovations that I think that I mentioned it already in some way. We emphasize on designing the program using local resources. So normally we try to use like a local woman that can start getting a role as community health workers. In Colombia, actually, we use what we call madre leader, like which is like I guess I use a mom, which is like have like a leaderships within the village. We also try to get a large-scale implementation over a broad geographical area, so we could have like a large number of clusters of children instead of like this very reduced and unsupervised RCTs. We try to like make it like mimic a scalable delivery at implementation. We use like government structures. For example, in India now, we use the preschools where we are intervening and the teachers of those preschools that are already there in place. In Tanzania, also the community health workers are already there, the health facilities are already there. The same in New Haven. We are working with the hospitals that are already in New Haven. So in some way, we commit from the start to work with the government and to have like a proper alliance.
You keep mentioning that you know, these previous 3 studies that have really shaped the way we think about the literature are kind of highly structured and highly supervised. I don't think that's quite accurate, to be honest, but put that to the side. In what way are you departing from the way those programs were conducted? In what sense are you sort of letting it all go free? I mean, it's not exactly clear what you mean by saying, well, you don't want this kind of suit. Are you changing the requirements of the visitors? And of course, they varied a lot across those programs. Are you changing the length of time, whether it was half a day or a total day? I'm not exactly sure the dimensions in which you're kind of improving on the existing work and what we can learn from it about interpreting the previous work.
Yeah, it's mostly about the structure in terms of the supervision that you have mostly in the Jamaica study, more than in the 3 that are there. I'm talking mostly about the Jamaica because the other 2, it's not fair to make like a comparison because it's not exactly the same program. Right. But we are comparing mostly about So
what do you mean the supervision in Jamaica? I mean, these are visits like once a week or once every 2 weeks. So I mean, in what sense the supervision is? Yeah. You mean the quality of the people doing it or what?
No, when I talk about the supervision is the team structure. So normally in Jamaica, what happened is that you have a person that was visiting. So we are not changing too much about like that one person is visiting the household and that she is spending like 1 hour or 1.5 hours and the activities even. So the thing that we are changing mostly is the team structure that you go along, you don't go always with the mentor, because in Jamaica, like each of these visitors like actually have like a lot of supervision. Okay. So in that sense, when I mention it here, I don't want to go behind. I'm talking mostly about the supervision that you have with the supervisors and the ones that are about the supervisors and so on. So that was like very, very controlled in some way and in Jamaica to actually like try to understand what the program was doing in the implementation.
So you're not talking about the actual visit.
No,
you're talking about how the visit was basically interpreted. Is that correct? And what advice was given to the visitor?
No, I'm talking about I'm talking about the supervision. So imagine that like the home visitor goes to the household before actually like there were a lot of supervision on how that person was doing the visit if the visit was done and she actually did the 3 activities, they were sometimes even like going to the visit with another person, with a supervisor, and the supervisor also stayed during the visits. And then that supervisor shared information with a district supervisor, for example, and then they correlate that everything was happening as it should be. And we are changing that because we know that at the state level, like it's super difficult for them to put resources to actually have like a very controlled supervision on the work that the people is doing in the field. Which people? Like the home visitors. So normally like the people go there, you receive the training, and then I let you go, which is what we are trying to replicate in our interventions currently.
So you don't monitor the home visits.
We monitoring, but not as intensive as the one in Jamaica.
But it's like a matter of degree. I'm not exactly sure what the nature of the degree is, how much more or less. I mean, in the Jamaican home visits, there wasn't a monitor or supervisor who went to every visit. So, I mean, that's not the case either. So anyway, it's just kind of vague what you're saying. Maybe you're not going to be precise about it, but that's okay. It's just
I will. So I actually.
I mean, you're setting up something very. You're kind of overstating what you're doing. Saying, "Oh, here, all this other work is tightly supervised, and this is the kind of ideal that's thrown out. The discussion that somehow all of this is ideal world, and you're going to do the real world. Here, for you, the real world is just a little less supervision of what the home visit is doing. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, but it's not only that, because in some way, given that at that point of time we didn't have like new technologies or anything, like we are also trying to use like the use of new technologies, apps, or like doing like intervention, like visits through online way instead of like actually visiting. So in that sense, we are trying to apply what it was done before in Jamaica in a way that could result like more cost effective. That is the only thing that I'm saying, that in a way we try to actually like put this in the field in a way that is more easily scalable for governments.
So this would be like distance learning for early childhood then? So basically, you're not going to send a visitor, you're going to send an app.
Well, I will explain, like for the Tanzania.
Okay, go ahead, please. Yeah, go ahead, please. I'm sorry. I just maybe getting ahead of the story here. It's just not very clear, a lot of the details you're talking about, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just like I will explain it on the next slides. Okay. In terms of the research design, we also try to collect quite a lot of household information, so then we can actually like modeling the behavioral impact of the intervention and try to identify the mechanism behind the changes that we see or the impacts that we see in child outcomes. And as I said before, currently, like we are facing more and more the issue that you need to actually like provide the intervention or intervene everyone in a village, but then that doesn't mean that we are actually doing the evaluation in the whole village, and we just select a subsample because of mostly resource constraints. So what is the Reach Up and Learn is mostly like to promote child development in an integrated manner. So you try to address cognitive, language, social, emotional, and motor during the first 2-3 years. Actually, now the Reach Up goes to up to 48, and the aim is to actually go up to 60 months. And then at that point, like motor disappear a bit in the last year. So then you start incorporating more and more also like executive functioning now, and is some of the changes that the Reach Up is trying to incorporate in the next revisions. They also encourage mothers to teach her children, well, mothers or primary caregivers to teach her children based on events surrounding daily routine activities. So also that is something that we have put like more innovation, and we have like complemented with the Reach Up and Learn team. And actually part of the Reach Up and Learn team currently, I am a member of the Reach Up and Learn. So it's a way we are also adapting some of the learning that we have getting from the different implementations in Colombia, in India, and others that we have done in Latin America, in other places in Asia and Africa. So we can incorporate this, and what we are trying to do is like that materials are still like super important, but also we want to address the importance of learning when in their daily activities, okay? And that is something that we are actually incorporating now in a parenting manual that is now out with the Reshape and Learn. So then we are just sharing the parenting manual with parents. We don't do any visit. We just share the information about what they can do. And given that we are not going, actually we cannot provide any material because we are not there. So we are trying to reduce a bit the importance of some of the key materials and replace it by I don't know, like when you watch the dishes, like you can count them, like mention the colors and talk with your child and have like open-ended discussions and so on. And of course, like trying to involve other members of the families. So let me finally, before this introduction, start with the work that we are doing in Odisha, India.
Well, maybe just in your talk, I'd be very curious. Go back a slide if you could, just for a second. The previous slide. You're somehow suggesting, wait, no, go back. No, go forward now. Sorry.
This
I
one?
already meant that. Yeah, that slide.
Yeah.
The point is, you say you're going to promote child development in an integrated manner. I guess you're suggesting that there's somehow a compartmentalized aspect of development for each of these skills: cognitive, language, social, emotional, put motor to the side. And I thought, I mean, do we really know that? I mean, here, I'm going to do this for social emotional. I'm going to do this for language. I'm going to do this for cognition. Do we have such knowledge that we can target in that dimension? People use that language, but is there a curriculum specifically for each one of those categories? Or is there an overall curriculum?
Well, we have an overall curriculum, but each of the activities address different domains. So if you go through the Reshape and Learn curriculum, you can see that there is one activity, for example, that is mostly language. Now, do we have scientific evidence that is only language that we are like promoting, and that doing that will not affect cognition or social emotional? No, but how I'm talking here how the Reshape and Learn is designed from its start. And actually, like, you can even separate the activities by domain, because they were constructed such a way that they address like cognition, language, social emotional, motor, or even later executive functioning and so on. That is a way how the curriculum is designed. But it's true that we have like a overall like curriculum, but the way that it was designed was to try to address this each of these, well, not separately, but it was designed separately. For example, there is one only for books, and the books or the reading is mostly associated to language. I agree with you that actually that
what if they're reading math? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, the separation here is really if this is more a set of categories of evaluation, not in the sense of instruction. I mean, I frequently get this question, oh, we're going to teach social emotional skills. Well, what does that mean? If I start screaming at the kid when I'm doing language, I don't think I'm going to develop the very good social emotional skills. So it's a question of really a question I'm interested in, how you can really break these components down, and in what sense these different components complement each other. You know, it's a whole group here in Chicago looking at acquisition of math skills, but those math skills turn out to be pretty important for things like language and so forth. So anyway, I just wonder how compartmentalized this can really be. Or if you have some knowledge, I'd like to know it. That's all.
No, I completely agree with you. I completely agree. I'm talking here, for that reason, I wanted to separate like the evidence base for this, separated from the child development world where we just designed the curriculum or adapted it. Like I have been like working on the adaptation of this, like extended up to 60, and even like all the curriculums that I have, like we have used in all the interventions, I have been involved in all the adaptation. So it have been like a lot of learning. I have worked like with Sally McGregor for days and days in front of the computer. And yeah, there are different ways to see this, but it's true that actually how we design it is mostly about separating the activities that are related with cognition, separated the ones that are with language and with social emotion and so on. Now, I completely agree that the way that you read also can like stress other things. For example, normally we say, sit your child in your lap and read like, or look like a book together, not even reading. But that of course like generate like an interaction, like social emotional, even can generate like creativity, which could be linked to cognition. Different ways to think about. So cognitive switching, which is like executive functioning. So I completely agree that the line in terms of scientific knowledge, I don't know it, and I don't think that there is a lot on that. And I really feel that all of these things are complement. I don't like if you increase social emotion.
Right, but I'm just asking, in any of your studies, are you breaking these components out? So let's suppose you come up with a category. May not be correct, but let's suppose provisionally it is. But what I do is I take that category of instruction, and in one village or one place, I have more of that and less of the other. And then we look at the outcomes a few years later. Is anybody doing that? I mean,
no.
Have you done?
The only thing that we have done in the Reshop and Learn is that there is one project in Madagascar where they didn't use the materials in the activities because they didn't have the resources. So now we can test actually what happened, what is the importance of materials for the Reshop. But we haven't tested that, and I'm taking note because we meet like every 2 weeks with the team. So maybe something that we should think about it. What is the relative importance of each of these one?
Well, it'll be interesting indeed, yes.
No, I completely agree, because also we don't know, most people, and actually like some of my colleagues in these projects, Horacio, Costas, and so on, they normally they tend to think that language is the one that is driving everything in the early years. But yeah, like in terms of like testing the curriculum itself, I'm not sure. Unfortunately, they just told me that I have 30 minutes left and I have several slides. So
no, you have more time. People can leave. We can still talk. So I'll be on the line.
I have more time. Yeah, but yeah. So
I give you
really
more
like
time. But people can drop out. There's no compulsion, especially on Zoom. We're not keep tracking heads. Okay, please.
Yeah, sorry. So I will try not to rush, but I would really like to show you everything that we are doing. So, but yeah. So this is a project in Odisha. So you can see here, this is Odisha, the state of Odisha, and then we are working in 3 districts. Bolangir, that is far away. So you can even say that is like even like poorest and like more rural. We are also working in Katak, which is like more like the main city center, let's say, and then in Bolangare, sorry. I have been there like 100 times and I still don't know how to say the name. So 30% of the population are under poverty line and 40% under the age of 5 are stunned. And why I'm talking that we are having like an integrated vision, it's not that we have this integrated vision when we started. Actually, like I joined after the pilot to this project when I was in the middle of my PhD. But here, what we did actually is to have 3 stages. So first, we have a pilot study to actually adapt the curriculum, because we didn't have, like we have it for Colombia, but that doesn't mean that you can just take it and use it here. So we needed to translate it, change it to the culture. So for example, instead of using like a kitchen set, a tea set, we use it a kitchen set. So there were like some things that we changed to make it like culturally appropriate. We also changed some things to make it like age appropriate, because in Colombia, some children could start like to walk 1 year, 1.5, but in India that happened quite later. So you also have to adjust the time that you are presenting the activities. In fact, that is also what we are doing now in the adaptation of the New Heaven. So I had to learn quite a lot of the New Heaven children to actually say, okay, when is that we can actually introduce these kind of things? So then we are not doing like too late or too before of their developmental, like chronological, not the chronological age, but actually the developmental age. So we did
just a quick question. So you mentioned that the program, you changed the program based on the location, stage of development. But do you do among participants, or do they all follow
No,
the same?
when I mentioned it, and I'm sorry if I wasn't clear, when I mentioned that we changed the program, it's not the program, like we changed the curriculum and adapted the curriculum in a way that if we were introducing books at, let's say 2 years, maybe in Colombia, that doesn't mean that we have to introduce it at 2 years also in India. So then we actually for that reason, we piloted to see okay, and we started the adaptation, but we also, even before doing that, we have a lot of discussion with for that reason I put it in the acknowledge. We worked with people that is based in India from a university in India that they work in child development. So they have tons of experience on it. Also, we work with an NGO, Pratam, that also have tons of experience. So we take that and we incorporate in the adaptation process. For example, now in Tanzania, we are also working with 2 NGOs, ECPAC and D3, that have done intervention in other places. Not evaluation, just implementation. So now we are putting the research and implementation together, and we learn from them for the adaptation of our curriculums that we have implemented. The same now in New Haven, I'm working with the Child Study Institute in Yale for their experience to actually adapt the curriculum. So there is quite a lot of project. I would say 1 year. It's not easy, 1 or 1.5 years to actually, before you even start the project itself, your evaluation.
So are you going to talk then about, I mean, this is very intriguing. I think you're hinting, or maybe you're saying, just to clarify, that you have a pretty good idea about at what measure of development a different intervention should be. So I have a recursive technology, I get a set of skills, and I should implement a particular technology at that point when that skill level is there. Could be the kids are at different ages when they reach that. I'm just trying to understand how much knowledge we have to target that finally.
Yeah, so normally, it's a good question. So normally what we do, and it's one of the aim of the Reshape curriculum, is that you try not to stick too much to the chronological age, but you try to tailor the developmental age of the children. And for that reason, normally when we do a curriculum, let's imagine that I say, okay, I have to intervene this child from 3 to 5. We don't train the home visitors or the facilitators only for 3 to 5. We actually develop a curriculum from 0 to 7. And then we teach them how to actually tailor the developmental age of the child. So then if they see that that child is behind in development, even if they are 3 years old, and how they can see it, because we have some milestones from the literature, from years of study in child development and psychiatry and psychology and so on, that there are some milestones that you should have at particular ages, for young children that are even by months. So then you first do a diagnostic, and once that you have the diagnostic at the first visit, then you start saying, okay, so this child have 3 months or 6 months is behind in terms of development, which is more or less what you do when you are testing the child with the Bailey. In the Bailey, you start with the chronological age, but if the child cannot do 3 tasks, then you go back, and you go back until you find the floor. It's more or less the same thing. And the floor could be even 1 year before in terms of the chronological age. And then that is when we start doing, we start with that child at 2 years activities instead of 3 years. I don't know if I was clear with the answer.
So
Are there any children where you basically give up?
Sorry, what yours? What
Well, I'm saying, I mean, there obviously
no, I
be
didn't
a
hear.
level.
Sorry, I didn't.
No, I'm just saying there obviously be a level so low that you couldn't do anything with the child, and then you abandon the child. That doesn't happen here.
No, we haven't had that experience until now. Mostly you have some few years. So one is adaptation, that you adapt the curriculum. So in that way, you never face that you have to go back so much, because you already more or less change the distribution before you start. But something that actually we are thinking quite a lot now for Tanzania, because we are starting in pregnancy. What we will do with we will continue doing the intervention if the child has some delay, and how we do it, because ethically you don't want to like leave them, no, like you want to continue intervene, and maybe it's even more important to intervene, but maybe our program is not relevant for that particular child. So those things are stuff that we are thinking through, but until now, at least in the project that we have in India, we never had to stop like intervening children because of they were like too back on their development. And actually when we did the Bailey, actually we never had to go back so much in the testing as well.
So how rapidly is their catch up? Say you go back, so the kid's age 3, but tested Bailey age 2. So how rapidly, when you put the kid and you start the kid at 3, do you go back fully? Or what's the actual intervention? How do you cope with that deficiency, and how quickly can you close it?
We don't have like evidence on that. Like I can tell you like what I see in the field, but it's not like actually evidence on it. And in fact, so here we have 2 things. So we have, let me continue. So in the early, so we have this pilot study that the aims are actually just to adapt the reshape curriculum to India. And we actually have a paper there that I put it as a reference. And then we have an early trial. So for that reason, I call it like an integrated version, because as you can see, we have an early trial and a late trial. The early trial, we did it between December 2016 and December 2018. And here, the main innovation, say, is that we were one of the first ones doing like a group intervention with the reshape. So not just doing like the home visiting in one arm, but actually we have another arm with the group visit. So here I am answering like Victor's question a while ago. And at some point, like I also want to answer your question, Professor, in terms of how you can do this. Well, with the home visit, it's not much an issue, because actually like you visit one-to-one. So then like the home visitors have the ability to actually address and try to see how you can actually go faster or no. And you can even jump some of the steps because you see that the child is doing well on that one. So maybe you have like a fast catch up and then you jump in some of the activities. Do I have evidence, scientific evidence on only those children compared to the others? No, we don't. We don't, because we never measured that particularly in the intervention itself, the way that they were doing. We only can do it in the Bailey, like to say which one were the ones that were going back too much. But given all the ethical and also the RCT that you have to be blinded, we never like try to get so much information for the monitoring data or the implementation data as a researcher. But it's something that maybe I put a note here that maybe we could try to get some idea in the projects that we are designing now. And then in the group sessions, though, we have a group for we have groups, and in the groups we divided in 2. So we have the ones that are younger and older. And in those groups, for example, answering your question, what we did is that it was a child in the older group, but actually it was off because all the other children were doing the activity, but that child couldn't do it, and started like feeling like bad and like feeling that he's not doing well and judge it. We move it to the younger group. And the same in the younger group. If there were children that were like doing much better and they were super faster and all the rest were feeling like, what is happening here? We are not doing anything because that child is answering everything. We move it to the older group ages. So in some way, we also try to address a bit, given though we didn't know in advance, we have this chronological age separation in the groups, but then like while you start, you can notice immediately the facilitators through the training that they should move some to the younger or to the older in terms of developmental age. And then they can do we can at least we think that in terms of the groups, they can do the catch-up much faster because they are not alone. They are with other children, like doing the stuff with them. I hope that I answer a bit
Yeah,
and here we have a
question. So what is the education of these home visitors or
what is what?
The educational level of
I'm going there. So that is the paper, and the other part is like a late trial that we didn't thought about it when we start the piloting or the early trial. Meanwhile, we were doing the early trial, we thought, oh, okay, there are still like some research questions that are unanswered. As the questions that Professor Heckman asked me at the beginning, what happened at the, are you following these children later? is it like a fade out or not? So then we said like, maybe it's important to actually answer if there are some complementarities in terms of interventions. And for that reason, like to the same sample of children, then we continue them and do another, like we re-randomize, and we continue with an intervention at the preschool level when they enter the preschool. This intervention was for children between 0 and 3. The second intervention was for children between 3 and 6. And then we enhance the current curriculum that they already have at the Angawari centers, which are like the preschools that they have in India, the public preschools, let's say. And it's a UNICEF, but it wasn't like, the training was never done like so well in some way. So what we did was actually like to improve the training, to enhance the curriculum, and also like to improve more materials to actually do the activities, because some of them were like actually read books or like do blogs or wherever, and they didn't have the blogs or the books or anything. So we actually put some materials also in some of the preschool. And we are working on that now. Actually, like, unfortunately, we were collecting data in March 2020, but you can imagine that we were not able. So we are planning to go to the field next month to finally do, so hopefully like we can still like publish a paper of it. It's really, well, this is a pilot study. It was in Katak, 400 children. I will move fast so then I can jump to the other stuff. The weekly visit in 18 months, very similar to what it was done in Jamaica, but adjusting what I mentioned before, like less supervision, run through Pratam, using local ones to adapt to implement the curriculum. And one of the things that I guess that everyone that is associated with Reshape really like is that it's true that we go for 1 hour or 1.5 hours or wherever it is, like 2 hours. It has different lengths for different projects. But once that you leave, like you ask the mothers to continue like doing the activities. In fact, like you leave like a set of toys, the ones that you use it during the visit, so then they can continue like practicing those activities throughout the week. And then in the next session, next week, you actually like go and ask at the beginning of the session, can you show me how you did this or this or this? So then you can actually see if they are continue doing that. And if not, you then put like more effort to actually ask the mom, please like try to do this manual or not, or what is happening, why you are not doing it. So then we, in some ways, not that we are just 1.5 hours, we are a bit more, because in theory, they continue doing this throughout the week. And in particular in these places, given that they don't have a lot of toys, in fact, when you do the home environment data collection, you can see that the toys these children use are like spoons, keys, plates. They don't have like proper toys. So those things are also like very nice for them, and they start like using it quite a lot. So the key questions were, can we make the program scalable? And here is your answer, your question, like it's mostly the home visitors were 18 years or older. The minimum was like 8 years of education and that they live in or nearby target communities. Okay, so that is what I said before as a local woman. Also low levels of training and then like to try to make materials locally. So in some way, not just to use what we was designing in Jamaica, but also doing adaptation in terms of the material that are easy to be done and that can be, the cost is not so big. So here I can show you some of the materials. In fact, all of this was done by the home visitors during the trainings. So here you can see that we have like puzzles, you have like stories to talk about that are also like adapted to the context. You have like here, just you put like tab caps at the top so then they can use it. This is for at the end of the curriculum, like start like with pre-numeracy. Here also pre-numeracy as well. And then these are things to talk about. And then you also have like blogs, which we use quite a lot. Of course, also that we try not to teach to the test. So it's not that we are doing like each of like the typical blocks activities that you have in the Bailey. So in some way the Reshape comes from before, but we also try to like diminish the way that we are teaching on the test, of course. And then, as I said, like we try to make it like also like cheap, and we do like a lot of toys that are made from waste material, as you can see. And actually, like we teach also to the moms to do this. And we actually have like a manual that we are also actually sharing now with the parental manual that we have put out in the COVID context. And here you can see the impacts for cognition is 0.35 for cognition, around 0.2 to 5 for language. In motor, we don't find impacts. And then you can also have like a measurement estimation, like a factor model to put everything together, and it's around 0.3. Then we can also study like some intermediate outcomes, and the ones that we address mostly were like the home environment, mostly the activities than material, because of course that we don't include the material that we give them and they don't have the resources. So that is like the thing that we are trying to address in Tanzania, liquidity constraints and like parental involvement, no? So in some way in India, we have never, like in all the studies, even in the one that we did in the early trial, we couldn't address actually like the liquidity constraints. So it's not that they start buying more materials. And we think that they will like to, but they couldn't, because actually they start doing more activities with them. This is the study design that I want to spend so much time, unless you have questions, but we have the baseline, we have 4 arms, a control arm, a nutritional educational arm, that we just provide nutritional information, not food itself or anything, just information. Then we have nutritional plus the individual stimulation, and nutritional plus the group stimulation. And the novelty, as I said before, the novelty in the study, and something that we continue using as a learning for the new projects, is that we wanted to compare groups against home visits, okay? We have 192 communities. We have 8 children per community. So in the communities that we have group sessions, we actually split the group in 2, 4 children for older and 4 for younger. The children were 7 to 16 months old at the start of the intervention. We have like a big age range. We actually have spillovers that I will not mention here, but actually we have from 0 to 7, and I think that it went up to 21, and it lasted 2 years. Instead of the pilot that we only did it for 18 months, here we did it for 2 years. And here you can see pictures of the home visits, that you have the facilitator in front of the mom. It lasts 1.5 hours. As I told you before, they have like free play, 4 activities, and then a recap. Okay. And then the next session, they do the same, and then they do the revision of the previous week. And then we have the group sessions that they last 1 and 45 minutes, so 15 minutes more. And they also have free play, but instead of having 4 activities, they only have 3 activities, okay? Of course, that is less costly and easier to scale up.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. Can you go back to the previous slide, please? Here I see that I outline, there's like, in all 4 groups, there's recover. What do you mean by recovered?
Yeah, where is it? Yeah, so the thing is that recovery in terms of the midline, because in the midline, there were some loss that we didn't find, and that doesn't mean that we stopped following them in the end line. And as we did analysis this is the table that we have in the pediatrics paper. As we did the analysis, baseline to midline, and also baseline to end line. So we actually changed the sample size, of course, and we wanted to explain why. Because in one, they didn't answer the question at midline, but then they answered at end line.
I see.
Do you know whether those children, still got a home visit or not?
Sorry, if we know?
Whether you know, like the missing children, like they have the home visit or not, or like a group visit.
Yeah. We have the information about. Yeah, we have all that information that I also mentioned in a few slides. Okay. But yeah, so this is just the study design, but of course that we know how many they did. So
when you do the home visits, you mainly target the children, right? Although the mothers are present, but you don't like
No.
teach?
It's so the reshape, how it works is that you explain the activity to the mom, and then you say, okay, now let's do this activity with the child. So normally the idea is that first you explain it to the mom, and then the mom do it with the child, and you are like the facilitator is in front in case that she thinks that she needs to explain something again because the mom is not doing properly. So in some way, if you ask me, it's not that it's like it's directed to the child, it's directed to the mom, and then we can improve mother and child interaction through the new knowledge that we are providing to mothers. Okay. So the Bailey is our outcome here, and these are results that we have in the pediatrics paper, that home visits improve cognition by 32% of standard deviation, language by 24. This is already after like multiple testing. It's not like, of course, that the p-value are different for without like multiple testing. Then the group sessions improve cognition by 28, so it's just a bit less. And actually, we test the statistically significant difference between the two of them, or they are not. So in theory, both of them are giving us like more or less the same results. And then we have language around for 30% in group session. That is higher for the home visit. So it could be also that, as I was saying before, there are so many others like externalities or positive externalities that we are getting, and a spillovers effect that we are getting from within the children, but actually also within the community in some way, or the village
So
that are.
Do you check like the, how to say, for example, the gender fraction, or like between the home visit group and the group session children, like whether their demographic are quite similar with each other? I mean, at least based on our analysis, we do find like in general, we know like the boys like development slowly, right? But actually the intervention for China Rich is also followed Jamaican Rich curriculum. The boys get a larger effect. So especially for language and cognitive skills. So maybe maybe that's because of the impact. I mean, that you do not divide by the children like by gender or like the age, like quite equally between the home visit group and the group session.
Yeah. So how we like the randomization that we did is at village level, and then actually like, well, here before I have like the numbers that we have for each of the control group and individual, but most of the village within each of the districts are quite similar. Like it's not that they are quite far from each other. Actually, in some of them, like you can in the next trial, in the late trial. Actually, some of the mentors that they were working in the preschools, they moved from one village to other. So it's not that they are too far from each other. It's not like in Tanzania, for example, that they will be far away. And then in terms of gender, yeah, in the pilot, we actually have gender impacts, like different gender impacts that you can see that males were doing worse than females, like all girls, sorry, than boys. But here we didn't find anything like that in the early trial. So we also don't find, well, as I said, like there is no different average effectiveness between groups and home. And the other thing that I wanted to mention, we measure, as I said before, the outcomes at midline and also at endline. And we didn't see any extra gain from midline to endline, but it doesn't reduce also. So in some way, this is also like relevant for policy, no? Like it has like a relevant implication for future intervention design. We'll never know, like we don't have like, but what will happen if actually one stop at one and we don't continue on the other one, but at least it's something that is important to mention. In terms of the attendance that you asked me, the group attendance was about 50%, and the home visit achieved like around 76. Of course, it's much easier that they open the door if you knock. So something that we need to address, and we try to address quite a lot in terms of the group. Like we invite them like to, like we went to pick some of them. We try to like share the message of the importance of like doing like early childhood interventions, like to interact with your child. So this is something that we will have to, we need like further research, and we are trying to address in the intervention in Tanzania. Well, it's the thing that I mentioned before.
Do you have any idea about the like families or mothers who tend not to attend Do you have any
Yeah, so
systematic
most of them, they
differences
were
between?
saying, yeah, so they were saying mostly that so in India, there is also an issue about like how much like mothers can do without permission of fathers, you know, like, or like moving along, like some of the moms, if they were like, they were just like married, sometimes like they cannot go out the household for the first year, you know. So there are some things that are, there are some like norms that are there that are like difficult to fight. But there are also like time and monetary constraints that they mention as to us, you know, and also like other children's, like when they have so many, they cannot leave them. Like it's different if someone comes to my place instead of me leaving. And it's not just like being in the visit for 1 hour or 1.5 hours. It's also like the time that it takes me to go there and then go back. So those are the things that is, of course, like something that we will have to address. And for that reason, for example, now in New Haven, we are trying to do like online visits. So that means that you don't have to leave your house, but that doesn't mean that you don't have like a group session. In fact, the visits are in group in New Haven.
But in the India case, it sounds like households with more kids where the mother is more busy attending to all the kids, or maybe the mother has a job, then they will be less likely to attend the intervention. Then isn't that like mothers who are able to make it to the intervention actually have their children will begin with a higher chance of being successful?
Well, we actually analyzed it like first burn or stuff like that in the data, and we didn't see like a huge difference. So I will say that it's mostly like about like norms or financial constraints, and exactly those things that we learned from this after we finished and throughout the implementation, in fact, that we didn't thought in advance. Like we thought that it will be more difficult, but we also, we didn't want it to make it in a way that it couldn't be scalable. We didn't want to give them money for going to the session because we knew from the government that no way they will give the money. Because we have those conversations. So in some way, what we wanted to see is like, let's try to see how it will work if this will be implemented at scale. One thing that we get from this is, even though they only attended 50%, they get the same results. So imagine if they attend the same percentage that the individual sessions were. So that means that maybe the impact will be even more, you know? So in some way, we are trying to get that knowledge and try to change the way that we are implementing these programs in Tanzania. So now we are addressing some of the things with the cash transfer. We are addressing some things like maybe with the videos, the online group sessions that we are doing now in New Haven. So most of the learning that we are using groups instead of individual sessions. Or like the combination of both, because we take the best of the both worlds. In fact, like in Tanzania, it's not one or the other, it's both.
But two questions. I mean, what William was really saying is that the better results of the group could well be due to selection, maternal selection. You know, you have a very low attendance rate compared to the home visit. That's one. But the second is, in what sense do you standardize the curriculum in these two different arms of the trial? In what sense are the children exposed to the same learning environment? That's really central to this comparison that you're making.
Of course. So for the first one, as I said before to the previous question, like we actually tested quite a lot, like if the results like were biased because like the sample is like selected like self-selected in some way. We didn't find anything about that. So we are more or less like
how do you determine that
result? But for
how would you determine that? I'm just curious. How specifically do you determine there's no selection on the 50%?
No, we actually use the data from the implementation and the information that because from the data collection is not a lot that we can have. Like we could use, as I said before, the number of children, the level of education, the income that they have, if the mom was working or not. So we actually like did all the heterogeneity analysis to see like if some of the conditions that you can measure through the data collection could tell you a bit about it. And we use the monitoring information in some way to get some feedback that Pratham got in terms of like why they were not going. So we actually also could have like these things that I mentioned in terms of social norms or or like permissions or other difficulties that we couldn't measure through the data collection.
I have a quick question. So
let me just finalize the other question and I go back to you.
Okay.
In terms of the other question that you asked me, thank you, yeah, so when we did adaptation of the curriculum, so first we did adaptation with the Jamaica for the pilot, and we did adaptation for the home. Then we did another process for the early trial where we actually did the mapping, and we spent quite a lot again with Sally, like City, like doing the mapping month by month between the individual and the group session. So then we don't have the issue about like not being comfortable that actually like the stimulation and the information that they're receiving from the facilitators is comparable between both groups. So the only difference that we cannot address, of course, is like the interactions that are happening throughout the group, and for that reason we have another paper about the networks and the impacts of that. First in mothers, and then we will do it on early childhood outcomes. But we made, of course, the curriculum is, we designed it, and in fact, like that curriculum is now available for the reshape. Anyone that wanted, we are happy to share it. Actually, like they are using it in India now. We use it in Tanzania. We are also like giving this curriculum to others researchers. We are using it now in New Haven. It's just like right on MIU, and we develop like the group and individual that are like completely like matched between the two of them, and we did that exercise. Sorry, I just wanted to answer the two questions.
Well, no, but I mean, the point though is you're absolutely right. This isn't going to standardize the interaction, and there's a whole set of possibilities with the group that instead of having, you know, an intervention for each child, like in a home visit, or each parent, you could do it with one parent, and that could be the leader for the group. So it could be much cheaper, right, for the group.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how far you went in exploring group dynamics and understanding how transmission was achieved in the group status versus the individual status.
So we actually developed like a social network questionnaire to try to see how much, not also like in the context of India. I think that if we will do it in another place, maybe we will not ask exactly the same questions, but we are like, we ask questions particular in terms of empowerment, on depression, on violence, on like going to work options. And then that is what we are discussing in the social network paper.
But that's the network of the parents.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So,
I'm just wondering about the network within the visit, the group visit. I mean, you have several children, and you know, like in the Reggio curriculum, they learn from each other, and sometimes across ages, so that you can really get a sense in which. So can you investigate that network, or have you so far?
Yeah, so we are working on that actually. Like the first paper that we did was the social network on mothers, and the second one that we want to do is in terms of like children's and child development. So I couldn't say like what are the results that we are getting there because we're still working on it. But that is something that we are thinking to write. Well, we already started working on that. So and as soon as we have something, we will put it out. I think that in the NBR as well. But yeah, it's something that that is quite relevant for us as well. It's just that we wanted to separate the papers.
Okay.
Yeah. So here for the lead trial, I have 5 minutes. So sorry. For the lead trial,
have more time. You can stay on. It's up to you. I mean, sorry, Victor. I'm not trying to usurp you, but asked a lot of questions.
I agree with you.
I would keep going
longer.
But people can leave. I mean, obviously, there's no compulsion. No.
Yeah, sorry. It's just that I also want to answer your question, and they're a very good question. And in fact, I already have like two more papers ideas. So, but yeah. So the lead trial. This is so as I told you, the early trial is from 0 to 3. The lead trial is from 3 to 6. And the research questions were the ones that I mentioned before. What is the best timing or duration of intervention under 6? Are intervention better at age 1 or 3 or 3 to 6? Will children intervene lower than 3 benefit more from interventions when they are 3 or 6? So, so what we did here is to design a preschool intervention for children aged 3 to 6, building on the previous intervention that we did before. And we also make it like directly scalable because we were working and using the existing government structure in Odisha. So we actually have MIU with the government. We're working in the preschool facilities. We train the preschool teachers. We did everything with the government. And actually, everything that we put it extra, we discuss it with the government. They review the curriculum that we designed. So this is also, the curriculum is something that we started from the curriculum that they have that was designed by UNICEF. But then actually we worked with Sally together as well, adapting, enhancing this curriculum. In which way? We also try to bring like the ideas from the reshape. And in fact, as you know, the reshape goes up to 48 and even to 60. So we ended up at 36. So we bring those ideas and we try to incorporate in the first year of the preschool curriculum. And then we try to incorporate with Sally more concepts related with executive functioning, self-confidence, inhibitory control, cognitive switching, and so on in the activities that we were developing in the curriculum. We also have like parenting meetings, so the parents could know like the importance of early childhood, so we could try to increase a bit the community knowledge about the importance of this. And the idea, well, the output will be also in some way related to the research questions that we ask, no? Like establish the best age to start intervention. Is it at 1 year or 3 years old? And what is the value of complementing or continuing the interventions that you have at early years?
But how do you separate out, how do you separate out the issue of the age at which you start from the nature of the intervention at a specific age? Those are two separate questions. Maybe it's meaningless to say it's better to start at 1 than 3. It's a question of what am I doing at 1 versus what am I doing at 3? So how are you going to separate that question out? Seems like that's a very different issue. Are you going to do the same intervention at 1 as at 3? That seems pretty bad. So I assume not. So I'm just curious that when you say, what's the best time to start? I mean, the best time is when the mother's pregnant, I guess, but that's a different issue. There are different interventions. You know, it's nutrition and stress and so forth. So I'm just wondering how the study is structured to get at that question about what the optimal intervention is at each age and how it would be age adjusted and so forth. It's wonderful if you could get such information. I'm not sure you can, but if you can, it's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, I think that is a great point. And maybe we should even, like, yeah, I agree with you. I think that because it's not the same intervention, it has the same principles, but it's not the same intervention. In fact, like, right, we move away from the things that we were doing before and you start doing more like numeracy, literacy, you know. So in some way, I agree with you that maybe we should like put like that, maybe not even a footnote, but actually like to be very clear that it's like together with the intervention, no? Because it's not the same one. It's just, it's not even like, it's still like parental stimulation in some way, because we are not like having visit with parents and children, though we are incorporating a parental component. So I'm very, well, thank you for your comment, and I will share this with my co-authors, so then we can, because we are actually working on the, well, we are already producing the results, but we are actually start working on the paper itself. Yeah. So so here as it lasts 21 months. So from year 4 and 5, or 4, 5, 6. It depends, because we have this window at the start of the intervention, so they are around 3 years old. We have the same villages that we had before. So then you can see what we did is that for the complete early trial, we divided into the control and then Hayes preschool program, the EPP. And we did that for each of the arms. So instead of having 4, now we have 8. And then we can actually test what it will happen if you don't do anything, control, and if you do like stimulation in both. And then you can even group like individual and group, and then you can have nothing, and like stimulation and EPP, or stimulation and control, or nothing and then stimulation. So there are several games that you can play around here to actually test different hypotheses. conditional on the comment that Professor Herman made. No, like we should be careful because it's true that they are not the same intervention at all. They have the same spirit in some way, like improve child outcomes. Yeah, here someone asked me like how far or near. So here, like we have like a map of like the 3 districts and where the preschools are. So then you can see the controls and the treatment. And we have around 200 controls and 200 treatments. And we train only like the teachers that they only have 1 teacher per preschool. Normally they have like around 15, 20 children per class. Again, the sample size is, so we provide intervention to everyone in the preschool, but then we evaluate only to our children. And then we also did like an extra sample for children at the same level, at the same age of our target children. So then we can also test for other children that are at the same age of the children that didn't have the intervention before. So these are some of the adaptations and creations that we did. We actually developed some books with Sally. We used some of the things that we have at the end of the intervention before, and we incorporate so that the change is not so drastic, so fast for some of the children that were in the previous interventions. But we have much more like cognitive executive functioning stuff, like having games like red, stop, green, go, and now green, stop, red, go, and stuff like that. So then you can actually have those things. I will not spend time on this, like later you can see it, but this is the schedule that they have at the class. Here you can see how they are doing the activities in the preschools. We incorporate like worksheets. So they are the worksheets of the children. We also incorporate like, I haven't mentioned quite a lot all the other things that we do because I wanted to focus on the psychosocial intervention, but we have this holistic approach about the importance, of course, of like wash in general, okay? Like washing the hands, like health, nutrition, and so on. Here you can see the activities, the free play. The free play, we also allow them like to choose, so then they can have like develop some leaderships like skills in some way. So some preliminary results at midline, because endline we haven't collected yet. We found positive impacts on general intelligence because we use the WIPSI. We also find impacts on the school readiness using the Daveron. And we also find impacts on the quality activities at preschools. We adapted we actually asked, because mostly they have all these activities, action, song, storytelling, meal times, free play. So we developed like a type of questionnaire where you can measure more or less if they are doing the activities or no, and what they are doing. And we also adapted the class, and we actually observed, and we went to each of the preschool and have like a person that was there the whole day and actually like measuring the class index that we also adapted. And we also find like some positive impacts at midline. So, and at midline, it was only after 9 months. And imagine that this took like maybe 2 or 3 months for the preschoolers, teachers to actually like implement it as it should be. So we were like quite excited to see the endline results. Unfortunately, let's hope that it is still there. Now we are going 2 years after, but yeah. This should be Tanzania, no? ECD, no, this is in Tanzania.
Sorry. So you didn't mention the complementarities, right?
The what?
Complementarities. So like, who benefits the most to the ones that?
No, because yeah, we haven't like we haven't like working on that yet. We have some initial results, but I would prefer, as a team prefer not to share that because we are not 100% convinced, and also because we would like to have the endline results. This is, as I said before, at midline, they were only like 9 months, and actually like effective, they were only maybe 6. So it's also not fair to compare 6 against like 2 years, you know? So in that sense, we prefer like to actually like wait.
Okay, so this is just comparing, but these results, just so I understand, it's everybody that received the EPP, everybody that didn't receive the EPP.
Yeah,
from all
at midline. At midline, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Of course, that yeah. Then we have Tanzania that we call it Kasasi Kijajo study. As I said before, we have like a longitudinal component. So this one is mostly like funded by the Swedish Research Council, but we are also getting funding from Stockholm University, some of our own research grants. It's a nationally representative sample of 108 communities. We will sample 18 pregnant women in each community in the 3rd trimester. We will have 4 waves at pregnancy, H1, H2, H3. And then we will have one, we aim to have more waves. Actually, we want to follow up these children up to 18, but we need to get more funding. And then we also want to have more RCTs later, but at least we are starting with this one that is also already funded. That is for from pregnancy up to 1 year old. And we will have 14 control for 40 treatment, that the treatment is actually receiving the ReSHAP in group sessions. And so they have group sessions for parenting stimulation, and they also have individual session in this holistic approach, where we teach them the importance in pregnancy, breastfeeding, health, etc., etc. So that those are happening in individual sessions from the start. So it's a combination of individual and group intervention, and using also a digital app. So in some way it could be more scalable. And not only that, but also we think that it will improve like the motivation of the community health workers and will reduce their workload. So we will have 40 for that, and then we will have 40 for the cash transfer intervention that I mentioned before. Well, we will sample like, again, 18 pregnant women, and we will have the same 4 ways because it's within these longitudinal studies, just that instead we have less communities. And which are the pillars of our projects? There are 4 mostly. So we want to improve the measurement of inputs and outputs in child development process. So we are like developing new assessments, so we don't have to pay the Bailey license every time that we do our interventions. Yeah, so we are working on that. And so not only that, it's also what I mentioned before in terms of social norms, household allocation, bargaining power, attitudes and violence, risky behaviors, and so on. Okay, beliefs, of course. Also refining our understanding of the process of human development in the early years, because we will be measuring early child outcomes every time, so we could estimate production functions with a higher frequency. Also refining our understanding
So what is the frequency? Just curiosity.
Okay, sorry,
what is the frequency that you're talking about?
Yeah, so as I said before, it's like pregnancy H1, H2, H3.
Okay.
So it's not like amazing, but at least like it's better than we have done before. Yeah. And actually, like with the app that I will explain you before, we will also be collecting other data. It's just that it was only for the treatment, but we will collecting like more periodic data, like every month, so we can even estimate production functions by monthly, just for the treatment. But you will learn about child development as well.
And with that, you'll be able to track the parent usage of the app, like how much they're on it and engaging.
Yeah, so the good thing is that we are working with NGOs that they have already experienced in Tanzania implementing and using this app, this digital app, with D3 and ECPAC. So their impression, I cannot say, but their impression is, as I said before, that this is not for parents. The digital app is for the community health workers, the visitors. So they are the ones that are using it to actually like run the curriculum, to check lists during the visit, to know, so they have like a faster feedback, like if the child is not doing this, you should do this, and it shows you like the messages. So it's more like a chat box, like in time, like on time, you know, at the same time that you are running the sessions. So, but it's not for parents. Like maybe I wasn't clear. I'm sorry about that. Then refine our understanding of parental investment, as I said before, because we will measure like all this other information, and we actually want to have like several more structural modeling, incorporating like labor decision, pregnancy decision, and so on, taking into consideration beliefs, social norms within the model, and without making assumption, but actually as we have the data, we can actually estimate it and impose those parameters. Well, maybe impose doesn't sound so nice, but in some way we provide more flexibility to the estimation of the structural modeling. And then of course, like having this
Pamela, can I just ask a question? Do I understand correctly that this particular intervention is looking primarily, it's administered through an app, it's not through a visit? Is that correct?
No. It's a community health work. You still have a visit, a person that goes, but the person that goes with use an app to do the session. So in some way, when they collect the data,
okay. I see. Yeah, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So just to also understand, the benefit of the app is more personalized learning or personalized.
It has several advantages, and it's the one that I will mention it now. First of all, well, this is like that we are using Reshape and Learn, like how we are using our previous knowledge or learning on this. Well, this is the approach that we are using here, that is not only Reshape, because Reshape is for the group sessions, but then we have this individual session that we are using this nurture care approach from the WHO and the UNICEF. So then you have this whole bioecological model, that is not only the child, but also all their environment. And it's not only like responsive care needs and an opportunity for early learning, but it's also good health, adequate nutrition, and security and safety. And for that reason, we start at pregnancy. We have sessions about health, nutrition, breastfeeding, and so on. So it's like a much more directed, holistic approach than before. So what are the advantages of the digital app is that it reminds you it's more like for having like a better performance of the community health workers at the visit that is more standardized, because we teach them, we train them, but we don't know what they do at the household, because we are not there, we are not supervising, etc. So we supervise, but that's not that we will like. So in this way, we are actually taking that the things that should happen are happening. And if not, they receive like some feedback information, and we try to change that. But we also think that it will motivate them more, instead of like filling like forms after and they don't remember, and actually the quality of the data will be much better. We also think that it will improve their motivation. We also get like extra data, as I said before, because with the checklist and stuff like that, we will be able to collect this. And I think that in China, they also did that, Like Horacio told me that they have like an app that they are putting, or they collect information of the ASQ at the end. So they actually have like some checklists that they are doing within the visits. So then they see also the child development of the children throughout, or what they did. So in some way also, we think that will be quite helpful for the implementation and the standardization of the program itself. It could also help them in doing like these 8 appropriate play activities, because it will check, okay, can the child like walk, read, well, and if not, do this, and if yes, do this. So in some ways, a type of tree that it will direct you to do the proper thing that you should do during the visits.
Aren't you worried that the visitor is going to be looking at the app instead of talking to the families? Isn't that something that could be a problem?
Yeah, so that is a concern that we have at the beginning when we thought about it, like to start using this. What our implementers, like our partners, told us is that when I talk now, it sounds that it's a lot, but it's not a lot. I'm talking about the whole project that it lasts like 1 year. But actually, like at the beginning, there are some texts at the beginning that they can do once that they leave the house. So they don't have to be in front of the mom, and the mom doesn't have to feel that she's doing well or not, which is my major concern, that the mom can feel, okay, they are like checking if I am doing what I should do. And you don't need an app. You can even be like with a paper and a pen. So we are also taking care of that. And for that reason, we are doing a piloting before that to actually adjust it. And we are super care about that. It's within the PIs, the co-PIs, and we believe our partners, but yeah, like we will pilot it. So hopefully, finger crossed, we eliminate that. And finally, maybe just 5 minutes, sorry for the extra time, in New Haven. So here, more to come, and happy to receive your feedback and ideas. In New Haven, we have this 1 to 3 months project, which is a project that it tries to aim for poverty, mental health, and child development. So the aims are, as I said before, is to improve mental health, because we think that mental health, due to the evidence, the scientific evidence, have an impact on child development. So the idea is to try to, we don't want to test that. We take it as given. So we want to improve mental health and parental practices of low-income mothers, and addressing both their own well-being, but as well as the cognitive and social-emotional development of their children. And the idea, again, is to try to test and develop a scalable intervention. And we are doing this.
This is to reach up, right?
Yeah, let me show you now in the next slide.
Okay, sorry.
I have all the information. It's just that I'm spending maybe more slides than you would like to. Sorry about that.
No, this is great. This is great.
So we are doing this with groups and online delivery. So in some way, again, like learning from previous projects, which is a study design. We recruit a cohort of low-income pregnant women in the second trimester as well. Well, in Tanzania is the third trimester, because in Tanzania it's quite, mothers don't go to the health facility until that very late. Here in the US is quite different, no? So we will know when they are pregnant even at the first trimester. So we are following from the third trimester of pregnancy from the Yale New Haven Health System prenatal care clinics. So again, we are working with the government and with things that are already in place. The randomization, so here we will have 3 groups. So we will have like the control group, but the control group is a poor control group, so we can actually compare. And the other control group is a control group that have that we will give an iPad. Why? Because to have these sessions, we are given an iPad to the treatment. So we would like to, it could be that if we test it just against the control, we don't know if it's the iPad or the intervention. So we are having these 3 groups, you know, and we will select 18 to 20 women per area, okay, each time. This is a basis rolling also intervention, okay? And we will do the basis rolling for almost like 2 years. So the sample size will increase. Meanwhile, we continue. The same in Tanzania, because of course, it's not that you have so many pregnant women per village. So you need to increase the size as you start implementing the program. The other thing that I didn't mention is that, of course, they have some struggle with depressive symptoms. So we will use the CSD to actually like test that before we select the sample. And we estimate that we will get over 1,800 pregnant women for this study annually. So this is the stimulation, and well, you see my face here, but it's like has 3 components in the title. So we have phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Phase 3 is the reach-up. But as I said before, this is not just like parent-child stimulation. It's also like it has this component on like maternal depression. So for that reason, we have 2 previous interventions for that. One during pregnancy, that we use the mom partnership, that maybe you know it because it's well known more or less, I think, in the US. So it's a stress management cognitive behavioral therapy for mothers in the second trimester of pregnancy. So we try to improve their skills in terms of learning to recognize their mood, and also to use some techniques to improve like how they feel, you know. And we do this with particular videos and online discussion that we have with the mothers. And this was the period of the last trimester, so 3 months. Then in phase 2, it will be 12 weeks, which is also again 3 months of the first 3 months of the child when it's born. And it will be an intervention in the immediate postpartum periods. And the idea here is to use the mom's parenting dance, that I don't know if you know it, but also the aim of this one is that parents learn skills that build positive qualities in the parenting-child relationship, skills for tuning into, understanding, and managing children's emotions, and also their own emotions, like mother's own emotions. You will say, well, but that is not the reach-up. No, the reach-up actually like doesn't address like maternal issues or maternal depression. So what we are doing is that, given that the child is there because it's born, we continue addressing maternal depression issues, because it could be that it doesn't disappear during the last trimester, but we also complement it to try to take like and provide them tools for them like to improve their mental health, but also like to try to generate this contact with the child in a proper way. And finally, during the last 9 months, so if you see it, this intervention last 15 months.
Pamela, could you just amplify on this dance? I mean, this notion of dyadic interaction seems to be completely separate from the issue of depression. I mean, so the question is, what exactly is this intervention? As opposed to, I mean, I understand the whole class of interventions trying to promote the child and parent interaction. That's what Reach Up is trying to do in some sense. So how does it differ? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's a bit different in the sense that it's more focused on social emotional activities that actually teaching them how to read or how to improve like language or cognitive skills or motor skills. So it's mostly focused only in social emotional. So how the program works is that before the program starts, they do a video of the mom and the child interacting. And then during the sessions, they show these videos. They are group sessions, as I told you before, no? There are group sessions and online sessions. So they show this video and they say, okay, this is what you are doing, and this is maybe what you can do instead of what you were doing to try to improve actually like the positive interaction between the mom and the child in terms of like social emotional connection or interaction, if you wanted.
So they would advise the mother that they reacted to the child's tantrum in the wrong way. I'm just curious.
Well, more than that, I would say that it's more like a positive way. They demonstrate positive examples of target parenting skills in terms of social emotional.
But it's not intervening in the particular interaction of the child and the mother. I
No,
mean, it's not.
no, because no.
Okay.
No, it's not that in the session you are, well, if the child wants to be there, it can be there. You cannot say to the mom, don't bring your child, because also the child is very young, but it's mostly directed to the mom. So then we actually explain them, these are the ways that you can interact in a positive way with your child, you know, and try to improve their skills to actually like get a sense of their own mood and then how they can change it, and also the mood of the child. What if the child is crying a lot? What can you do? So then we can teach them like positive examples of target parenting skills, which we don't do too much in the Reach Up in the first month, because we mostly focus, we talk about like singing to the child, looking to the child, smiling to the child, but it's not like about what you can do if the child is crying a lot, or what if you are down, what you can do for you not to pass that mood to your child mood, you know. But both of these, in fact, the three of these interventions have been already used before and have like a lot of evidence and have been shown to be successful. So it's not that we are trying like a new program. What we are trying is the combination of them, and to see if this could produce like some positive outcome in the medium and in the long term, you know. And finally, the last 9 months is the Reach Up and Learn. But it's a new Reach Up and Learn because it's one of the first time that we are doing like virtually group sessions. So again, I'm working in the adaptation of that now with the child study, the child center, at Yale, and working on the Reach Up and Learn adaptation. So this is what we are doing. And the conclusions is that we have a lot that we are learning, that there is a lot of potential for scalability in terms of online delivery, in terms of group sessions. There is a lot that we need to complement and learn about the thing that we are doing now, like in New Haven or even in India, like complemented interventions, subject to that each intervention are not doing the same, and to try to move to the holistic approach that I was mentioning before, that is not only psychosocial stimulation, but we also need to prepare the brain and the child and the mom to be prepared to receive all this stimulation. That's it. I have something for the role of beliefs, but I will share the slide so then if someone wants it, can look at it. But it was just to show you some work that we are doing. But yeah, that's it. And thank you so much. And sorry for taking 25 more minutes.
No, we appreciate it. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much. I learned a lot.
No, thank you to everyone for your questions, and I will share some of the emails, some of the papers that I mentioned in the talk.
Yeah, share your slides. I'd be curious about what you're doing on beliefs. How does it differ from some of what Flavio's done in at Rice and also at in Philadelphia? I know that he's had these programs, and I'm just curious how there's mixed evidence. I think. I mean, he's very positive. I know Orazio is, but I don't know if it's really that well settled an issue about inducing beliefs, but maybe you could talk very briefly about how strong the evidence really is on interventions about imparting beliefs. Giving information to parents clearly makes a difference, but I guess I'm curious what your summary of the state of the literature is.
Yeah, so in terms of like parental beliefs, it's true that there is not much, and also like the way that people is measuring is not consistent throughout the study, so it's difficult to make like a final statement on it.
Right.
The work that we are doing with Flavio and Orazio is related with what Flavio did in Philadelphia mostly.
Right, right.
And Rice, I don't know, maybe he changed it, but it's mostly in Philadelphia. We started this actually in the Colombian study, which we also have the NBR paper out, and we are like submitting it again to another journal. But the idea is actually like to try to see the difference with Flavio's work, the previous work from Flavio is that now we have the intervention, no? So you can actually use like the treatment as a instrument in the estimation process. And the other thing that we are doing also is to try to understand the difference between objective estimation of production function and subjective estimation of production function, because we are modeling all the time and we are talking about policy advices or implications, assuming that MANS has the same functional form of the production function in their head that the ones that the researcher has. And it could be that it's not exactly the same.
Right.
So in
right.
some ways, and in some ways to try to learn how much weight mothers put in each of these parameters, let's say, of the production function. But the other thing that we are also doing.
But how much does the intervention change the weight that they place towards the true production function?
Yeah. So in that sense, we have found that actually, like, well, in Colombia we only did it once. In India we did it 2-3 times. So actually in India now we are writing a paper in terms of learning, not only comparing subjective and objective, but also the learning process of beliefs throughout the intervention. And I can tell you from both studies, unfortunately, that we are not changing like beliefs, but we are changing knowledge. So then the key question, and some like very nice discussion with my co-authors that we are having these days, is what is knowledge and what is beliefs? Because we are changing the knowledge, but the belief seems that not to change. And if they change, it changes for everyone in some way, change for the control and the treatment throughout. And maybe that is because they change throughout the development of their children, that they are learning through the process more than the actual intervention itself. Yeah, so we don't see that actually the intervention change beliefs, and for the same reason it will be strange that we find that that there is an updating process, like a correction, no, like a learning process. But that is still like work that we are doing, and it's something that we have like an open agenda, and we want to continue doing it more and more.
But if the intervention isn't. But if the intervention isn't altering beliefs or knowledge, I'm not sure what the distinction is either, but if it's not doing that, then how does it work? I mean, so the parents are taking action, something's happening. So we see an outcome, but it's not due to the enhanced knowledge that the parents acquire. Then what is it due to?
Well, mostly what we find in our study is that because they change their behavior in terms of investment. So they spend more time with their children, or in Colombia, for example, given that they have.
But isn't that changing their beliefs, though? I mean, investment is based on their expectation of a response. If the response is, non-zero, then they will take action on it. But if it's zero, so that's why I'm just
Not
curious.
well, exactly, not necessarily. And in fact, like that is the reason also, as I mentioned it before, that we find like some fade out effects after we disappear, as after after the home visitor disappear, because maybe parents are doing the activities, not because someone is there and is telling you do this, but once that we disappear, parental behavior change. And in that sense, like actually that is what we find in Colombia in the parental investment, like that they don't do it anymore. So then like the fade out, you see it there after, as I said, like in Jamaica, in Colombia and so on, but then it appears, but not because the parent continue like changing the behavior, it's just that because we put a seed on children's, well, from what we're seeing, and that shows later, you know, on other outcomes, or the same outcomes, cognitive, like, and the ones that I mentioned, labor, risky behavior, and so on later. So that is exactly something that is quite relevant for us, because what do we have, and for that reason, we have like the Indian project, like the late trial. Maybe we must not disappear. We need to continue there, and we need to continue reinforcing this. And that is also the project in Tanzania now. Maybe it's not enough like having this visit with moms. Maybe you need to have it by groups, because in groups you actually see some stuff. So maybe you need to change social norms, and it's not only beliefs, you know, and the community information that you have. So yeah, I think that there is a lot to do there. I think that is an amazing agenda. I really like it. But it's difficult to answer the question that you asked me, like, what do we know? I think that we don't have like even what you're saying, like that we have working quite a lot about this. What is knowledge? What is beliefs? And it's different, like, because knowledge is something that you know that, well, but yeah, I don't want to continue because it's too long, that discussion, but yeah, so it's not exactly the same.
But so you're adopting a notion of a belief is something that you don't think is true.
Well,
so I consciously lie to myself about a state of knowledge. I'm just curious the distinction you're drawing here.
Not necessarily. It's not that it's not true, but actually, like, you can have a belief about something, even though you don't know that if it's true or not. You know, so you can have a belief without having the knowledge. So I think that is more the correlation and the ratio.
No, I can have a belief without a knowledge, but that the belief would actually be something that would be about a fact, and whether or not the fact is true is a separate point. I completely agree. But I would guess.
Who knows? Because you can have a belief about something that is not a fact, and in fact, but
no, I understand. But if there is a fact,
like
to be,
in India.
No. But what I'm trying to get at is that if the structure is such that you tell them something which now is a fact, right? Something about parenting they didn't know. So I guess the question is, do they not absorb that fact? And that's separate from whether or not they believe you. They may think you're a liar, but they could at least say, oh, the visitor told me this, and that's knowledge that was acquired. So there's a whole spectrum here of what you might call knowledge and beliefs. So I'm not exactly sure here how you're going about this separation. But sure, no, people could have all kinds of mistaken beliefs. But I thought the idea was you had these production functions, and you could determine, and somehow you instilled in the parents the idea that there is a production function.
Yeah,
and that changed their behavior, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just that we are also measuring knowledge with other instruments that you ask, like things that, as you said, they are a fact. So we are asking like their knowledge about those facts.
Right.
And then we can see, and for that reason, I'm talking about the correlation in some way, which is relevant for the learning process, as you were mentioning. Before, we never thought about that when we did the project in Colombia, because we only collected beliefs once. So but if you have it more time and you are collecting more time, you should see what you are saying, that you take that and then you incorporate that in its knowledge. So that is something that we are working on it now currently. We are having like several discussions, like fun discussions about it, and try to see how we move from those discussions to estimations and results.
Yeah, no, it sounds
and storytelling. But yeah,
regarding parent behaviors, I think I read from Banerjee and Duflo that in India, those parents tend to, like when they have multiple children, they tend to pick out one children that they believe to be have the highest potential of doing well, and then they only invest in that children and basically let other children do it, observe like things like this happening in India or other places?
It's a good point. It's something that we should look at there more, because it's true that, again, like we have to take into account these social norms. So it could be that maybe, and that is what we will start doing now, like some heterogeneity analysis, like beliefs and norms for the girls and the boys in India, for the mothers that are more educated and less educated, related to this knowledge concept that I mentioned before. And we were also thinking about like number of children, but it's something that you can maybe even combine, like boys and only one. Or so I'm taking note about that. And thank you about it in the comments.
Well, but there's a related question I'd add to William's observation, and that is, we found in the Perry study that there were spillovers to the other children in the family, even though one child was the target. And you still organized your intervention about a particular child somehow. I don't know, I select the child, from birth or whatever. But what we found is there actually seemed to be, and there were documented benefits for the children who were really, who were not directly engaged in the interaction or intervention, but nonetheless, they benefited from either from the example of their own sibling, or from the knowledge that the parents acquired, or both. So I'm curious if you can really separate those factors out. Because we have children born before and we have children born after the intervention. In the Perry case, the children born after, at least during the intervention, got the intervention too. But the children born before did not, they're older, but we still see effects for them. And in principle, we could see effects for the children who were born after the intervention ended as well, but there were too few of them to make a distinction there because the parents were already, well, anyway, it's a long story, but there are too few to make that, to study that. So what do you know?
Yeah. So in Katak, the pilot study, remember the 400 observations? Right. So we follow up them just now, and we are writing the paper actually, like to see long-term impacts for the children are now like 7 to 9. And we find like positive impacts, very good, like in fact. And we are actually analyzing because we also interview, and we collected also information about younger children, the ones that were born before, and we also have information about the ones that they were already there in terms of parental investment. So one thing that we want to see if the parents like learn about what they were doing with the target child, with the younger children, that they did it. And moreover, if there is this spillovers effect in general. So that is something that we are also working as a second paper actually on that.
Well, you might take a look at this, the paper that Victor and I wrote with Jorge that actually
for
shows
the Perry study.
The Perry study. We follow the Perry children, and we have the children of Perry. We have 2 generation effects here.
Yeah, I was in one of your presentations on that. I think that it was, where was it? In London, I think you presented it.
Oh no, this is much well,
newer.
You may be right. You may be right.
Like
we had some early results on that. We had some early results. You're absolutely right. I forgot about that. Yeah. But here we have more sharp results, and I don't think I featured the results on the siblings in that result. There aren't a lot of them.
You mentioned it. In fact, for that reason, I collected data on the siblings.
Okay, good. Well, okay, great. Okay, great. I'd like to. Well, we should compare results for sure.
Yeah, no, but I remember because I looked at presentation then after you were like the main talk. But yeah, and in India, this not the pilot, but the main trial and the late trial, we actually have spillovers also. We actually collect data in spillovers, and we see that actually the first intervention has spillover effects, and we will see what happened with the second one. So it's something that we are also analyzing like more and more in terms of one of the areas or pillars of our agenda.
So are the spillover effects more pronounced on the children born before the intervention? So they're older, but the children who are born after the intervention ends, but nonetheless are raised by the same parents. Can you make a distinction?
Yeah, we make that decision. We are making the study between the ones before and after, but I don't remember yet like the numbers. We are just finalizing the first paper of the impact, and we are starting now with analysis of this. So I couldn't say, but as soon as I have something, I can send you an email.
Okay,
And
good.
I
I'd
will
like
look
to
at the
know.
paper so we could compare results, because actually I was thinking to use yours as the main, because there are not many studies about that.
No, there aren't. I think
Yeah.
John List is planning to look at that too in his study in Chicago, the South Suburban, what is it called? Czech study, CHEA. I don't remember the acronym stands for, but List has this intervention with Fryer and Levitt. And he has, I think, some studies. And he looked at our paper too and said, you know, he reported the data. So no, it's useful. No, it's useful. I'm just
Yeah.
curious. So,
Yeah.
all right. Anyway.
Sorry again for the late, but I hope that everyone is enjoying it. I'm enjoying
We
it.
enjoy it a lot. That's why it's called revealed preference, I think. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Well, that is another topic.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Pamela. I
No, thank
appreciate it.
you.